I've been sabotaged. Lewis Hamilton's explosive comments after the Belgian Grand Prix have triggered a furious reaction inside Ferrari. Stay until the end to discover the massive internal fine the team wants to hit him with. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. The events that unfolded at Spa-Francorchamps were not just another chapter in a difficult season. They marked the moment when Lewis Hamilton decided enough was enough. What had been a smoldering frustration ignited into a full-blown inferno. And now, Formula One's most decorated driver stands at the epicenter of a scandal so explosive it threatens to obliterate Ferrari's public image, fracture their internal structure, and trigger a seismic shift in the balance of power across the entire grid. For months, Hamilton had walked the tightrope between loyalty and disillusionment, between optimism and mistrust, but what happened in Belgium ripped away the last threads of diplomacy. His humiliation in the race wasn't the result of bad luck or unfortunate timing. It was, in his own words, the product of premeditated sabotage. It began earlier in the week, when Ferrari boldly announced that both of their drivers would receive the long-awaited dual upgrade package, an update said to be pivotal in closing the performance gap to Red Bull and McLaren. Ferrari's press release detailed the enhancements in language dripping with confidence: revised rear-wing geometry to reduce drag, advanced brake cooling ducts to stabilize temperatures on demanding circuits, and an all-new clutch system designed for lightning-fast launches. The excitement in the paddock was palpable. Technical analysts speculated about whether Ferrari had finally turned the corner. Hamilton himself expressed cautious hope during Thursday's media rounds. But behind the scenes, the reality was beginning to unravel. Hamilton had already been growing suspicious in recent races. He had noticed subtle recurring discrepancies, differences in traction, brake consistency, and top-end speed that couldn't be explained by setup choices alone. His requests for full transparency on hardware deployment had often been deflected or delayed. Engineers spoke in circles, telemetry sessions were cut short, and when questions were pushed too hard, meetings were quickly adjourned. Still, he remained quiet. Still, he gave the team the benefit of the doubt. But in Spa, the charade collapsed in broad daylight. From the first free practice session, Hamilton could feel something was wrong. The car didn't respond the way it should have. He struggled to find balance in the high-speed corners, experienced unpredictable brake fade on every long run, and had to fight wheel spin out of nearly every slow exit. While his teammate posted purple sectors and praised the car's newfound stability, Hamilton wrestled with a machine that felt as though it had regressed, not improved. His debriefs grew more pointed. He demanded raw data, side-by-side comparisons with Leclerc's car. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Leclerc's SF25 was not only faster, it was behaving fundamentally differently. Hamilton's rear downforce was weaker. His brake ducts were running hotter. His clutch bite points were misaligned. Ferrari claimed both cars were equal, but the telemetry said otherwise. By Saturday, the frustration was boiling over. Hamilton exited qualifying in Q1, a shocking and almost absurd result for a driver who had never failed to reach Q2 at Spa in his entire career. His radio messages, usually controlled and focused, betrayed hints of sarcasm and disbelief. "Interesting choice of setup," he muttered, referring to a decision that hadn't been his to make. As journalists scrambled for answers and Ferrari's comms team issued vague statements about track evolution and driver adaptation, Hamilton disappeared into the back of the garage. He skipped the usual media obligations, his expression dark, his words measured. He didn't need to scream. He just needed to wait for the race to make the betrayal undeniable. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Sunday was carnage. Hamilton's launch was sluggish, again, due to a clutch system that had supposedly been upgraded. Within the first lap, he was overtaken by cars that had no business being faster. He reported overheating brakes by lap 4, inconsistent torque delivery by lap 9, and total rear instability by lap 13. Tire degradation was far worse than simulations had predicted. The pit wall, when questioned, offered non-answers. "We are investigating, Lewis. Keep pushing." But Hamilton knew there was nothing to push. He was driving a car that had been neutered, stripped of its potential, a ghost of the machinery Leclerc was handling with ease up front. While his teammates surged to a podium finish, Hamilton was lapped by cars from the midfield, reduced to fighting with a Haas, barely able to hold position on the straights. When the checkered flag waved, he crossed the line in 16th. The silence in the cockpit was deafening. Once back in the paddock, Hamilton's composure disintegrated. He refused to take part in the team's post-race debrief. He walked straight past the Ferrari hospitality unit and into a private conference room set aside for his management team. The door was locked for hours. Inside, heated discussions took place between his agents, legal counsel, and performance advisors. According to one insider, Hamilton delivered an ultimatum: unless a full audit of component distribution, upgrade scheduling, and strategic parity was initiated within 48 hours, he would activate exit clauses in his contract and make every detail public. Ferrari scrambled. Emergency meetings were held. Vasseur was reportedly blindsided, not just by the accusations, but by the volume of evidence Hamilton's side had compiled. Every telemetry chart, every strategic discrepancy, every piece of data logged and time-stamped. The sabotage, Hamilton claimed, wasn't speculative, it was provable. And then came the leaks. Journalists close to Hamilton's camp began receiving tips. Confidential reports suggesting that the upgrades fitted to Hamilton's car were missing key aerodynamic shrouds. That his brake system had retained an older specification due to supply limitations. That Leclerc's gearbox mapping had been fine-tuned on the simulator for weeks, while Hamilton's had been adjusted the night before qualifying. As the story spread, social media erupted. Fans who had once questioned Hamilton's concerns now saw the pattern. Former drivers weighed in. Technical experts began dissecting the footage, frame by frame, sector by sector, showing that the cars were clearly not behaving identically. The denials from Ferrari only added fuel to the fire. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Behind the scenes, Hamilton's representatives have begun accelerating talks with Red Bull. What began as casual conversations has evolved into a serious proposal. Word has it that the offer includes not just a race seat, but a hybrid role that would allow Hamilton input on technical development and strategic structure, something Ferrari had promised and never delivered. Christian Horner is believed to be intrigued by the opportunity. Adrian Newey, whose respect for Hamilton runs deep, has expressed quiet support. The wild card remains Verstappen. But insiders say the Dutchman may be willing to coexist, so long as team hierarchy is maintained and both cars remain competitive. For Red Bull, the marketing value, the performance potential, and the chance to secure their dominance for another half-decade are too enticing to ignore. Ferrari now finds itself backed into a corner, caught between denial and panic. They're fighting not just for their public image, but for the soul of their team. They've begun offering Hamilton concessions, special briefings, new engineer appointments, even hints at restructuring the garage to better reflect parity. But Hamilton isn't listening anymore. He's heard the promises before. He's seen what happens when words replace action. He knows that staying silent now would be an act of self-destruction. He's not playing politics. He's playing for legacy. And if that legacy leads him away from Ferrari and into the hands of the team that once fought him tooth and nail, so be it. He'll go. And he'll win. On his terms. With no apologies. Because for Lewis Hamilton, the line has been crossed. And the only thing more dangerous than a betrayed champion is one who's finally ready to speak. In a weekend already saturated with pressure, political tension, and technical uncertainty, what unfolded inside the Ferrari garage sent shockwaves not just through the team, but across the entire Formula One world. It wasn't simply a matter of performance disparity, setup misalignment, or bad luck. It was something far more delicate, far more incendiary. It was the erosion of trust, the quiet collapse of a supposed partnership built on legacy, ambition, and mutual respect. What happened between Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton just hours before qualifying has set off a chain reaction that may not only redefine the trajectory of the season, it may rewrite the very essence of Hamilton's time in red, and how history will remember it. Well before the engines fired up on Saturday, the atmosphere inside the Ferrari engineering room had shifted from focused intensity to something colder, something fractured. Behind a closed door with only a small group of senior technical figures present, Hamilton was informed of a decision that blindsided him. The long-awaited, heavily publicized rear-end aerodynamic upgrade package, one designed to improve rear stability, downforce distribution, and drag reduction, would not be fitted to his SF25. The very same package he had helped develop through countless simulator sessions, feedback loops, and private test days. The car would remain in its older configuration, while Charles Leclerc's chassis would receive the full array of upgrades, including the modified diffuser, revised floor geometry, and the newly calibrated rear wing that was expected to deliver a substantial gain in lap time and tire management. The reasoning given to Hamilton was, at least officially, centered on safety. Ferrari engineers claimed that during overnight simulations and correlation reviews, they observed unpredictable interactions between the updated aero components and Hamilton's unique suspension settings that he prefers to generate greater rear grip under throttle. They said they couldn't validate the interaction under full race conditions without risking performance anomalies or structural inconsistencies. Therefore, in what they described as a data-driven decision, they would install the new components solely on Leclerc's car for the purposes of controlled performance benchmarking, while leaving Hamilton with the older spec, promising that if the data looked solid, he'd receive the full package at the next round. But to Hamilton, none of it added up. The justification felt flimsy, the explanation far too convenient. And more importantly, the communication process felt like a slap in the face. Not only had the decision been made without his input, it had been finalized without his knowledge, and only revealed at the last possible moment. For a 7-time world champion who was promised equal treatment, competitive parity, and complete transparency, the move reeked of favoritism, mismanagement, or worse, political maneuvering within the corridors of Maranello. Sources from within Hamilton's camp said he was incandescent with fury. He reportedly left the meeting without a word, ignored attempts by senior team members to engage him, and refused to participate in the routine pre-qualifying engineering walkthrough. Those close to him described a man deeply insulted, isolated, and entirely unconvinced by the logic being presented to him. The qualifying session that followed was a performance devoid of hope. Hamilton, with visibly unstable rear traction and poor turn-in compliance, struggled from the very first run. He narrowly escaped Q1, only to be eliminated in Q2 after battling with unpredictable rear-end rotation and a lack of downforce stability at high speed. Onboard footage showed constant corrections through fast corners, delayed throttle application on exit, and clear signs of a car that was outside its optimal operating window. In stark contrast, Leclerc's upgraded car looked planted, composed, and surgically precise. Every braking zone was later. Every apex more aggressive. Every straight line longer, faster, and more efficient. Race day made the disparity even harder to deny. From the formation lap, Hamilton's voice on the radio signaled trouble. Brake temperatures were inconsistent. Pedal response was vague. By lap 3, the car began locking up on both front corners, despite adjustments in brake balance and energy recovery systems. Then came the unsettling revelation. The car was pulling unevenly under deceleration, a symptom that can result from either an aero imbalance or asymmetric brake wear, both of which Hamilton had flagged earlier in the weekend. His tone over the radio was calm, but increasingly frustrated. "Why is it doing this again?" he asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and exasperation. "It's not holding the line anywhere. It's dragging left under braking." By lap 7, any hope of competing for points had evaporated. Hamilton's car began suffering severe clutch slip exiting corners, particularly in second and third gear. The power unit wasn't deploying torque smoothly, and the drivetrain felt as if it was momentarily disconnected under acceleration, causing hesitation that ruined traction zones and destroyed lap consistency. By lap 10, the brakes were overheating so severely that he had to begin lifting 30 meters earlier into braking zones, effectively ending any competitive fight. Meanwhile, Leclerc surged. With the upgraded components generating improved downforce, cooling airflow, and rear-end grip, the Monégasque driver maintained strong pace throughout the stint. He defended hard, attacked cleanly, and capitalized on a perfectly timed safety car to undercut a rival and snatch a podium in the closing laps. While the cameras captured cheers and applause from his side of the garage, Hamilton's was frozen in silence, a portrait of isolation inside a team that was supposed to have his back. Post-race, Hamilton didn't hold back. In an interview that has already been dissected by every analyst, pundit, and armchair strategist across the globe, he gave a brutally honest breakdown of the weekend's chaos. "The car wasn't right from the first lap," he said, looking down, shaking his head. "I said it again and again, the clutch was slipping. The rear was unpredictable. The brakes? Gone by lap 10. I told them in practice. I told them in quali. I told them again today. And they said it was within the range. That's not acceptable. That's not racing." When asked if he believed the decision to withhold the upgrade affected his performance, Hamilton paused, then answered with chilling precision, "You can watch the data. Look at the GPS overlays. Compare the cars. That's not a small difference. That's not a tenth here or there. That's a philosophy change. That's a different machine. So yeah, it made a difference. And if people want to say it was for safety, let them say it. But I know what this weekend was. I know what it felt like. And I know what I wasn't given. The implications of his words are staggering. They suggest not just technical disparity, but a total breakdown in trust. A fracture that goes beyond one weekend. Something deeper, more corrosive, perhaps unrecoverable. Team management has scrambled to control the narrative, but fans and insiders alike are drawing their own conclusions. Some believe Ferrari's internal politics are surfacing once again, prioritizing their homegrown talent over the outsider. Others see a power struggle, a shift in development focus, or a quiet unraveling of a relationship that was always built on fragile expectations. What remains clear is that Hamilton feels betrayed. Not just by the car, or the strategy, or the data, but by a system that promised respect and delivered something else. And in a sport where milliseconds matter, but relationships matter more, that betrayal may soon become irreversible. Hamilton's silence after the interview, his absence from post-race meetings, his decision to fly out of the circuit privately, none of it feels like coincidence. It feels like the calm before the storm. And whatever happens next, it won't be subtle. It will be seismic. The tension surrounding Lewis Hamilton's situation inside Ferrari has reached a breaking point, no longer simmering quietly beneath the surface but erupting into a full-blown crisis that has exposed the cracks in what was once touted as a dream partnership. The Belgian Grand Prix weekend, already loaded with unpredictable weather, strategic pressure and technical challenges, became the setting for what many now see as a pivotal moment in Hamilton's Ferrari tenure. A moment that may very well define how, or if, this relationship moves forward at all. For a driver who has built his legacy on excellence, accountability and transparency, the events at Spa were not just frustrating, they were humiliating, infuriating, and perhaps most dangerously, deeply personal. The numbers told a damning story. A P16 finish in a car that lacked bite, grip and composure, while his teammate, Charles Leclerc, drove to a podium finish in what appeared to be an entirely different machine. But for Hamilton, it wasn't the position that hurt the most, it was the betrayal. It was the decision that left him stripped of the very tools he had worked relentlessly to improve. The upgrades, the much-anticipated revised aerodynamic surfaces, the refined clutch software, the lightweight suspension tweaks, were absent from his car. And it wasn't due to bad luck, weather timing, or a crash in practice. It was a conscious decision made by the team to allocate every major performance component to Leclerc alone. For Hamilton, it was not just a technical discrepancy. It was a symbol of mistrust. A signal that, in moments of high stakes, Ferrari had chosen its side. He didn't hide it. He couldn't. His words after the race cut through the post-race noise like a razor. "We were promised equal treatment," he said, voice cold and restrained. That was part of the deal. That was the foundation. "We don't come here to just participate. We're here to fight. But you can't fight when you're handed a blunt weapon and told to go into battle." Today was not a matter of pace. It was a matter of decisions. And the decisions made this weekend were crystal clear. One car was supported. The other was compromised. What makes the whole episode even more infuriating for Hamilton supporters, and even more difficult for the team to explain away, is the fact that he was the one who championed the upgrade package. For weeks, he'd been pushing for its early implementation, knowing that Spa's unique combination of long straights, heavy braking zones, and mixed grip levels would offer a perfect testing ground. While the technical department remained hesitant, worried about the new components' behavior under load transitions at high speed, Hamilton personally insisted on pushing forward. He spent countless hours locked inside the Maranello simulator suite, working past midnight on multiple occasions, analyzing sector breakdowns, grip curves, throttle delay charts, and airflow anomalies. He coordinated directly with both the software and hardware teams to address feedback loops in the clutch response curve. He made detailed notes, annotated graphs, requested fresh telemetry overlays. He poured himself into the project, believing that these upgrades could be a game changer. Yet when the race weekend arrived, all that effort, all that data, all that personal investment was handed over to someone else. The team's public justification was measured and diplomatic. They cited concerns over part durability, a lack of full field validation, and a desire to gather maximum data through a single test case. But those explanations rang hollow in the face of reality. Leclerc's upgraded car performed flawlessly. Not a single component showed signs of failure. In fact, Performance analysts noted a consistent delta of over 0.4 per lap between the two Ferraris, particularly in medium-speed corners where the revised aero surfaces and clutch mapping offered more mid-corner rotation and superior traction out of exits. The data didn't lie. The difference wasn't marginal. It was enormous. Back in Hamilton's corner of the garage, confusion turned to disbelief, then to outright silence. His lead race engineer, usually confident and composed, was seen repeatedly checking his monitor, shaking his head, lips pursed tightly. The support mechanics, many of whom had grown deeply loyal to Hamilton since his arrival, were visibly agitated. One was overheard muttering that the car felt like last year's baseline, not this month's update. Communication between the two engineering teams, always cordial, often collaborative, became stiff, guarded, almost adversarial. There were no glances across the garage, no shared telemetry discussions. Each side was now operating in its own orbit, and Hamilton's side was drifting further away. When Hamilton returned to the paddock after the race, he didn't storm off. He didn't shout. He didn't call out names. Instead, he spoke with an unsettling calm, the kind of composure that only masks something deeper. Betrayal, when quiet, is more terrifying than rage. He gave his debrief to the team with surgical precision, pointed out exactly where the car's balance broke down, where torque application became unpredictable, where the old suspension components failed to respond to dynamic load shifts. Then he left. No extended media round. No time spent in the hospitality area. No dinner with the team. Just silence. Inside Maranello, the consequences of this weekend are now unfolding rapidly. Team leadership is scrambling to contain the damage. Emergency meetings have been called. Department heads are being questioned. Internal reviews of development priorities are underway. According to one insider, the technical staff received a late-night memo urging everyone to remain mindful of public narratives. But behind the scenes, it's clear, something is broken. Engineers are suddenly reluctant to speak candidly during briefings. Resource allocation meetings have turned tense. The collaborative spirit that Ferrari tried so hard to foster this season now feels frayed, brittle, even performative. Worse still, the ripple effect is extending beyond the team. Sponsors have begun to ask questions, quietly, but persistently. Partner stakeholders who had aligned themselves with Hamilton's arrival, drawn by his global appeal and legacy status, are now worried. They expected unity, progress, and a climb back to dominance. What they're seeing instead is a team split down the middle, a star driver isolated from the tools he needs, and a rival within his own garage seemingly elevated above him without explanation. Within the wider paddock, the Spa incident has reignited rumors that Hamilton's trust in Ferrari may already be nearing its end. Sources close to his management group suggest that contingency discussions have been reopened, options that had once been shelved now being quietly revisited. While Mercedes appears to have closed its doors for now, there are indications that both Aston Martin and Red Bull have been monitoring the situation closely. No formal contacts, no direct outreach, but plenty of interest. Because a Hamilton on the market, wounded but hungry, is a force of nature. And every top-tier team knows it. Hamilton himself remains outwardly composed. His interviews are clipped, his social media posts carefully curated, his public tone balanced. But there are signs, subtle, deliberate, unmistakable. Fewer team mentions. A shift in body language. A distancing. This isn't the same Lewis Hamilton who arrived at Ferrari with hope in his eyes and fire in his voice. This is a man who has been through too many battles to mistake politics for coincidence, who knows when trust has been eroded beyond repair, and who understands, better than anyone, that in Formula One, loyalty only matters when it's mutual. And right now, that loyalty feels broken. The silence inside the Ferrari garage after the checkered flag fell wasn't the usual reflection or focused recalibration. It was an eerie stillness drenched in discomfort, tension so thick it clung to the air like smoke. Mechanics went through the motions, packing up equipment with robotic detachment. Engineers kept their eyes glued to their screens, avoiding contact with each other as if glances might trigger confrontation. The post-race routine had collapsed into a bizarre, surreal atmosphere where no one dared speak first. Everyone felt it. Something had gone deeply, irreparably wrong. Lewis Hamilton, who had climbed out of the SF-24 with the body language of a man betrayed, didn't offer his trademark nods to the crew. No fist bumps. No debrief on the pit wall. He walked straight past them all, helmet still on, not pausing for even a second. His hands, normally expressive even in frustration, remained clenched at his sides. There was no interaction with Charles Leclerc, no eye contact with Frederic Vasseur. No acknowledgement of the team that had once promised him parity and partnership. Hamilton had made up his mind, and it was written in every one of his steps. Something had snapped. Those closest to him in the paddock had seen versions of this Hamilton before, after bad races, strategic blunders, and moments of political frustration, but this was entirely different. It wasn't about points lost or podiums missed. This was about trust. About betrayal. And as the minutes passed, the atmosphere around the Ferrari motorhome turned into a media storm waiting to detonate. Hamilton refused all initial interview requests. Ferrari press officers paced nervously outside his room, phones ringing non-stop, while journalists speculated about what had really happened behind the scenes. Inside the garage, radio logs were being reviewed. Tire temperature reports were pulled up again and again. Everyone was trying to find the moment, the choice, the call, the data, where the weekend had spiraled into disaster. After nearly an hour, Hamilton finally agreed to speak, only after a personal conversation with a long-trusted journalist he'd known since his McLaren days. When the cameras started rolling, there was no PR filter, no carefully crafted message, no corporate diplomacy. Just raw, unfiltered emotion laced with years of suppressed frustration. His words cut through the air like a blade. I've raced in pain, I've raced in fear, I've raced in machines that should have never touched a podium. But I've never raced while feeling this abandoned, he began, pausing just long enough to let the words sink in. You can't drive for a team that doesn't believe in you. They told me we were building something together. They told me this was about legacy. But when you're left out of the strategy room, when your voice disappears from the data conversations, when your car suddenly stops performing without explanation, what do you call that? The reaction was instantaneous. Across social platforms, fans unleashed a tidal wave of outrage. Ferrari's digital team was overwhelmed within minutes. Their recent Instagram post, intended to celebrate Leclerc's podium, was instantly hijacked by furious supporters demanding answers. The phrase #Sabotage in Spa erupted like wildfire, trending globally within 20 minutes. A second hashtag, #JusticeForLewis, began accumulating hundreds of thousands of uses within the hour. Entire Reddit threads dedicated to technical breakdowns, race telemetry, and onboard footage analysis sprouted like wildfire. Fans were pouring through replays frame by frame, looking for proof that Hamilton's race had been deliberately compromised. Some found patterns. Others found inconsistencies. One user pointed out a miscalculated fuel load that left Hamilton in fuel-saving mode 2 laps before anyone else. Another noted that his tire compound switch came too late, sabotaging any undercut potential. Still others compared radio transcripts, highlighting that Leclerc received 3 separate pace updates during the critical middle stint. Hamilton received one, and it was vague. Whether these were strategic failures or evidence of manipulation became irrelevant. The perception of sabotage had already taken hold. Former drivers joined the conversation. Jenson Button, during a Sky Sports segment, called the situation deeply disturbing and said it raised serious questions about intra-team fairness. Nico Rosberg, not known for siding with Hamilton, said during a podcast appearance that the optics are absolutely disastrous for Ferrari. Behind closed doors, one former world champion who had raced for Ferrari confided to a journalist, "When you walk into that team, they either embrace you or they chew you up. And if you're not their number one, you're nothing." The impact reached the very top of Ferrari's corporate structure. Internal emails leaked just hours later revealed that sponsors had begun inquiring about the controversy. Some were concerned about brand association with what was quickly being dubbed a betrayal of a global sporting icon. Executives at Shell and Ray-Ban reportedly demanded clarification. Vasseur, caught in a firestorm he no longer fully controlled, convened an emergency meeting with communication staff to craft a response, but nothing came. By the end of the night, Ferrari had said nothing, fueling the perception that there was something to hide. Back in the paddock, Hamilton's entourage closed ranks. No further comments. No clarifications. But body language said everything. When he left the circuit, he didn't do so in the Ferrari team car. He left in a private vehicle, separate from the rest of the team, accompanied only by his personal assistant and 2 members of his inner circle. The message couldn't have been louder: "I don't trust you. I'm done pretending I do." Within hours, speculation turned to what comes next. Would he leave the team before the end of the season? Was this the spark that would send him to Red Bull, Mercedes, or even a shock retirement announcement? One journalist close to the paddock claimed Hamilton had already made up his mind. That he would finish the season, but the contract termination clause was being reviewed. That conversations had already begun with another team. That the final act of his F1 career would not be written in red, but in revenge. And that's when things got even more volatile. Red Bull insiders began leaking tidbits, nothing confirmed, but everything timed perfectly. Hamilton had reportedly been invited to tour the simulator room. Conversations had allegedly occurred between his management and Helmut Marko. One source claimed Christian Horner had been in discreet talks for over a month, waiting for the moment Ferrari imploded. That moment had arrived. In less than 12 hours, what had started as a bad race became something seismic. A potential exodus. A reputational collapse. A driver so disillusioned he might turn the entire championship narrative upside down with a single press release. And through it all, Hamilton remained silent again, because now, the story told itself. Now, every eye was on Ferrari. Every journalist was combing through data. Every fan was choosing sides. The myth of unity inside the prancing horse had been shattered. What remains is a ticking clock. Hamilton's future no longer looks tied to Italy. Ferrari's image is bruised and bleeding. And the paddock knows the storm isn't over, it's just begun. Back in the secluded corridors of Maranello, tension is no longer a rumor whispered in hushed tones. It's a visible force hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. Ferrari's carefully curated image of unity and ambition is cracking under the weight of a controversy that refuses to die. What was once seen as a bold partnership between the most successful team in Formula One history and the sport's most decorated driver has now deteriorated into something resembling a Cold War. One filled with coded statements, withheld information, and an overwhelming sense that something has gone terribly wrong. The aftermath of Spa didn't just shake the foundations, it shattered trust, exposed hidden agendas, and unleashed a storm that may be impossible to contain. Inside the team, operations are no longer running on smooth rails. Meetings that once revolved around performance metrics and race strategy have reportedly turned into damage control sessions, with department heads nervously debating how to manage internal communications, handle media pressure, and navigate what's becoming a very public disintegration. Engineers are divided. Some remain loyal to Hamilton and believe the Spa incident was a betrayal of the team's commitment to fairness. Others, perhaps under pressure from senior management, have gone quiet, choosing silence over solidarity. It's no longer just a professional environment. It's a battlefield, and every side eye in the garage feels like a loaded weapon. Hamilton's team, long accustomed to managing pressure, has shifted into crisis mode. No longer just protecting a brand or maintaining public image, they're now actively investigating the events of Spa like prosecutors preparing a legal case. According to sources close to the situation, they've compiled a detailed dossier that includes internal radio transmissions, technical briefings, telemetry comparisons, and emails that suggest there may have been premeditation behind the decision to deliver the upgraded floor to only one car. They're not just upset, they're ready to challenge Ferrari with hard evidence, and if things escalate, that information might not remain behind closed doors for long. The legal implications are growing more severe by the hour. Hamilton's current contract reportedly includes clauses ensuring equal treatment in all aspects of vehicle development and deployment. These clauses weren't added out of paranoia, they were inserted because the seven-time world champion has lived through favoritism, political games, and unequal machinery before. And now, all signs point toward a breach. If the data supports that the decision to limit upgrades at Spa unfairly handicapped his car, it won't just be an internal scandal. It could lead to public arbitration, sponsorship complications, and even the early termination of what was meant to be a fairy tale partnership. Ferrari's leadership, meanwhile, appears fragmented. Senior executives have issued vague responses, deflecting accountability with phrases about long-term development plans and strategic resource allocation. But these empty statements have only added fuel to the fire. No one believes them. Not the fans. Not the media. Not even those within the team who now quietly question whether Ferrari's ambition has blinded them to the core principles of racing integrity. Behind the scenes, there are growing rumors of a power struggle, with factions forming around different drivers, and key personnel positioning themselves for an inevitable internal shakeup. And then there's Red Bull, the silent predator in all of this. Unlike most teams that would avoid the PR nightmare of poaching a driver mid-crisis, Red Bull is not afraid of controversy. They thrive on it. Reports suggest their top brass has already held discreet meetings with Hamilton's representatives. These aren't just exploratory talks, they're detailed discussions, involving contract structures, car development pathways, and even joint media strategies for how such an earth-shattering announcement could be revealed to the world. The idea of pairing Verstappen and Hamilton was once dismissed as unthinkable. Now it's being discussed in terms of logistics, timing, and spectacle. It would be the most polarizing and electric driver duo in Formula One history, and both parties know it. Hamilton himself seems to have crossed an emotional threshold. Gone are the carefully measured answers, the rehearsed diplomacy, the trademark optimism. What the world saw after Spa was a man pushed to the brink, a legend grappling not just with the betrayal of a team, but the realization that loyalty in this sport can be a one-way street. His words, brief and heavy, carried the weight of a man preparing for battle. There's a limit to how much a man can take. And I think I've just found mine. That wasn't frustration. That was clarity. A breaking point disguised as a declaration of war. Behind that statement lies a volcano of suppressed emotions. And now, it's only a matter of time before it erupts. The question isn't if he will act, it's how. Will he begin revealing what's been happening behind closed doors? Will he publicly call out the decisions that have undermined his position? Will he walk away before the season ends, sending shockwaves through the paddock? Or will he go into full vengeance mode, driving with the kind of fire that transforms frustration into fury, and fury into dominance? The rest of the paddock is rattled. Rival teams are watching closely, wondering how they can capitalize. Teammates are preparing for awkward debriefs. PR departments are rewriting talking points by the hour. Journalists are circling, waiting for the moment they can break the next chapter of the story. And fans? They're absolutely transfixed. Social media has turned into a battlefield of opinions, rumors, and theories. Every camera angle is reviewed for clues. Every radio message is parsed for subtext. Every move Hamilton makes is interpreted as a sign of either implosion or revolution. Ferrari may have underestimated who they were dealing with. Lewis Hamilton isn't just a driver with statistics. He's a global icon with influence that extends far beyond the track. And when you wrong someone like that, when you strip away their faith in your project, you don't just lose a driver. You unleash a force that is no longer bound by obligation, courtesy, or fear. If this chapter with Ferrari is coming to a close, it won't be a quiet exit. It will be cinematic, dramatic, unforgettable. A final act laced with fury, precision, and firepower. Whatever's coming next will not be subtle. It will not be easy to control. And it will not be reversible. If the rumors are true and Hamilton is already in deep conversations with Red Bull, or worse, preparing to air out everything he's kept silent for months, then the sport is heading into one of its most chaotic, controversial, and unforgettable eras. One that will be studied, replayed, and argued over for decades. Because this isn't just a driver being unhappy. This is the start of something much bigger. A reckoning. A revolt. And possibly, the beginning of a final glorious stand.